Hi everyone. Welcome back to my channel where I interview autoandrophiles and autogynephiles about their experiences with autoheterosexuality. And the point of doing this is to get more of our stories out there so that people who have our orientation they feel less confused and alone and they can find other stories to relate to and realize that there's other people out there like them. And I think hopefully this will contribute towards building um, our group identity sort of as a sexual minority so that we can understand ourselves and be understood by others. And today I'm here with Ashley, an autoandrophile from Australia. And yeah, thanks for coming on the channel, Ashley.
Thanks for having me. I'm so fucking nervous, but yeah, let's do this.
Hell yeah. All right. Um, so yeah, how did you uh, come across my channel or my work?
Probably ask AGP. Yeah, I'm gonna say ask AGP. Or yeah, ask AGP probably. Yeah. You're
All
pretty
right. Yeah.
active over there.
Yeah, I those are my people. So yeah, I try to be active over there. Um when did you I assume you probably ran into the concept of autoandrophilia before being an Ask AGP. So I'm curious uh like when did you first run into the concept of autoandrophilia and like how did you react to it?
Um, well, it was about a decade ago. I mean, I don't know exactly when I ran into autoandrophilia. I ran into the concept of autogynephilia about a decade ago, um, on Tumblr, of all places. And um it was a little bit after that I ran into autoandrophilia. But when I first ran into that concept, I was just like, hold up. Men get it too? And also, it has a name? You could have knocked me over with a feather. So like I instantly saw myself in that, even without hearing about the idea that it exists in women as well. I like instantly knew that it existed in women as well because I related to it so precisely, the male version. Like I was like, that's me, but the that's the male version of me.
Yeah, that's interesting that even though you didn't you encountered the AGP concept first that you realized that basically I have whatever the female version of this is.
Yeah, because
And
like my friends were transitioning all around me, and I was like, and I wanted to as well. I felt the urge to transition. I felt, the AAP mental shifts, but I was like, what's going on? Because there's no way that this many people, there's no way that this many trans people just happen to know each other unless they met through the trans community. But like, I couldn't explain why I felt that urge and why it the people around me seemed to as well. And then I discovered this like ATP concept, and I was like, oh my god, is that just what's happening to me and my friends? But I couldn't ask them about it because I couldn't just go up to them and be like, hey, is your gender identity caused by a weird sex thing secretly?
yeah, I mean, especially you wouldn't want to ask it that way, but yeah. Um
Yeah, right.
it's a touchy subject among the
Oh, for sure.
trans people. So you were socially within like a significant proportion of your friends were some sort of gender variant person.
Yes.
Uh, were they all
It was one of those
transitioning at the same time?
Yeah, it was one of those, like it was one of those just teenage trans friend groups where they all become trans at once.
Okay, so, like, was this in high school that this happened?
Yes, it was in high
Alright.
school, which I believe includes some of what you would call middle school
Right, yeah,
in
I have no
Australia.
idea what the Australian terms for this are, but
Our high
yeah,
school is our primary school is K to 6 and high school is 7 to 12.
okay, so basically, once people hit the age of puberty, they started turning trans?
Yeah. Funny how that works, eh?
Yeah, that's so strange. I Some scientists should look into this and maybe figure out if there's some sort of connection here. Um,
Yeah, why is nobody looking into this?
yeah. Okay, and when you first encountered the concept, and it sounds like you were kind of, like, stunned with its, like, revelatory aspect of, "Wow, there's, like, a name for this." Um, did how did it impact you in, like, emotionally? Like, was it upsetting to your self-image, or were you alright with it? So how did it make you feel?
Well, I wasn't ashamed because I already knew kind of like that's who I was, I guess. Well, I had felt I'd previously felt like I have this urge to transition, but also I can't really be trans because like I haven't known my whole life and I'm like a flaming heterosexual. Well, not exactly. Well, I was kind of like I was confused about my sexual orientation. Um that's a whole another thing. But like I was like I can't really be trans and I'm just like I've been like openly, you know, a normal cishet girl for too long to convince any endocrinologist worth their salt. Like they'll see right through me. But then I discovered this concept and I was like, maybe this is the motivating factor behind like a lot of quote unquote actual trans people. Maybe it's not so maybe it's not so uncommon and invalidating, I guess. But like once I learned that, I was like, okay, so this is caused by my sex drive. And right now, I'm a teenager. My sex drive is like obviously, you know, just crazy high. But when I grow up, it's gonna calm down and I'll be able to live as a normal cisgender woman. And like also because I'm a teenager, my identity is like fluctuating all over the place and I'm trying on all these different identities. So that's also like, you know, um that's another factor. But like once I grow up, my sex drive will calm down, my identity will stabilize, and I'll just be able to move on with my life like none of this trans stuff ever happened. And so I just have to wait it out. And so I did wait it out, and that's kind of what happened. Like, I mean, it's still a little bit relevant, but I just well, even if I do end up transitioning later, I'm glad to have waited and you know, made sure that it was the right decision. And like to this day, not transitioning as a teenager is like one of my proudest achievements because what other teenager has that level of foresight and self-awareness and discipline in the face of, hormones and peer pressure? I don't know,
Right.
not to talk myself up, but
No, I mean,
sorry, what were you saying?
I was what you were describing, you're thinking of, like, once you realized that you were probably experiencing autoandrophilia, and that it was hormonally driven and you're a teenager with a fluctuating identity. That sounds uncommonly self-aware, so I think it's reasonable for you to be
Yeah,
proud of that.
I was uncommonly self-aware as a teenager. Um, I was gonna say something, but I forgot. Oh well,
It'll
it'll
come
come to me.
back up. Yeah. Um,
I don't
so
think teenagers should have to be that self-aware though. Like it's an unrealistic expectation to expect them to self gatekeep to that level.
right. Yeah, I agree. That's Yeah, we can't expect teenagers to gatekeep their own sexual orientation. It's just that's not how humans are.
Mm,
Um, do you, so ha you said, basically you had friends that were gender variant and
yep.
trans. Do you think that, say, like, among female to male transitioners, how many of them would you say are likely, autoandrophilic?
Way more than anyone's acknowledging, and I guess that number would be 0, but, like, I definitely think that I mean, people say, it's more complicated for women. There's all these factors like internalized misogyny and like I don't know, just, wanting to escape sexualization, blah blah blah. But like the sexual the sexual orientation aspect of it is definitely also present for females. And when people say that it's not, it's kind of like they're saying that, oh well, if you're male, then of course you're going to be a massive pervert and you're going to do things because your sex drive tells you to. But if you're a female, you're just like totally innocent, right? But like these are teenage girls we're talking about. Teenagers are the horniest age group. If we say that they're asexual, we might as well say that all females are asexual. And I think we as a society have moved past that, right?
I mean, one would hope, but sometimes when you look at gender critical discourse, it doesn't seem that way. Um,
Yeah, I think people haven't given autoandrophilia its due.
yeah, I'm obviously I co-sign that opinion
Yeah.
100%. I
You're big on the
it's
AAP awareness, aren't you?
yeah, because it was hard enough for me to learn about autogynephilia. I only learned about it at age 31 and had been dealing with
Right.
gender issues
I was like
for
13,
several
14,
right.
and
It's
it was hugely helpful to learn about it early. So now I,
yeah.
want to help other people have the same benefit.
Yeah, I think it'll help that they'll be able to the hope is that the earlier they figure out what's going on, the earlier that they'll, um, be able to figure out, uh, basically, they'll be able to start having an intellectual grasp of it and maybe some idea of how they wanna incorporate it into their life because 'cause they'll have more time to think about it, and also, for the ones that do transition early, it seems beneficial for them to know why they're doing it and also to have the earlier they figure out about the cause of it, the longer they'll have to think about it, and they'll also be able to act earlier if they are ultimately are going to transition, which would help with their appearance outcomes, which, a lot of trans people really focus on.
Yeah.
Um, so could you explain to me I'm curious about some of your early in life, like, what in hindsight, like, what are some of the early signs of the fact that you'd later realize you're autoandrophilic, but, like, maybe early childhood stuff, do you have any memories pertaining to that?
I mean, I feel like I do have early memories before puberty of like emotions that I now associate with AAP. But then I wonder to myself, like, is that real or am I just doing that thing that that trans people sometimes do where they like insert those feelings into their childhood memories? Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure I have those feelings. I'm sure trans people like, have those that idea and they're not just like, you know, lying. I don't want to like accuse people of lying on purpose because I feel like there's very little of that going on. And like, everyone has some some like gender nonconformity in their history that they can pull up and say, "Look, I was trans all along." And I have things that I can pull up and say, "Look, I was AAP all along." Like, I don't know. I mean, I never like cross-dressed as a kid. I mean, I would wear boys' clothes sometimes, but it wasn't cross-dressing. It was just, girls sometimes wear clothes that happen to be from the boys section. There's no real taboo around it. There's not really like a way that there's certain clothes in this society that are designated specifically female only, no men allowed. But there aren't really that men only clothes much.
Right.
I don't know.
What sort of
I have memories
experiences
of
did you have? Like, some of your
like as a kid.
yeah, like, what like, do you have, like, some examples of specific memories or,
I
like,
remember
how you
like
felt?
I remember having my first like crush on a boy. Um, but like the way I imagined us interacting together, like I was imagining, taking a rather masculine role with him, like being the you know dominant one in the relationship. I mean, I was really young, so not that I knew anything about how relationships actually work, but I was imagining myself as kind of a masculine persona as well. I It's hard to explain. Um, I didn't do anything before puberty to, you know, I didn't do anything for the purpose of getting like good warm fuzzy gender euphoria feelings. They just kind of happened to me, and I didn't associate them with like anything sexual. I barely even associated them with the concept of whether I was a boy or a girl. You know how kids are. They're not so
Yeah.
conscious of,
What
well,
kind of things triggered that gender
yeah.
euphoria?
Um Trying to think. Like, I know, being entertaining or dressing up as a male character, or, yeah, just like self-inserting as a male character in a book. It was all very mental and internal. Like I said, it wasn't very action oriented. It was more thought processes. That's why it's
Okay,
hard to
so it
describe, because it's hard to anchor it to anything real.
right, yeah, it wasn't like you put on a pair of pants and a suit and then were like, you felt really good. It was just you maybe imagined yourself
No.
as a boy in a book or something and then felt really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was nothing transvestic about it until, like, puberty.
Once puberty hit, did um how did it start showing up?
Um, well, so I was a yaoi girl, um,
Hell yeah.
a Hatalia yaoi girl, to be precise. Um, you know Hatalia, the countries of the world imagined as cute boys.
No.
It's an anime. Which, by the way, what is it with us self straights and anime? That seems to be the awakening for so many of us.
Yeah, I don't I mean, I think part of it is anime characters are drawn idealistically beautiful. Like it is like an aesthetically beautiful art style.
Yeah.
Um and since it's animated, it can be anything. It's not limited by physical reality.
Mm.
Um but I yeah, did you start reading a bunch of yaoi once you started going through puberty?
Yeah, I read gay Hatalia fan fiction, and like, I would, think about the sex and how it would feel for both of them, and I'd be like, that's so hot. And like anytime I thought about sex when I was like, first starting puberty, I was thinking about two men um having sex. That was what sex was to me. Um Hold on, give me a sec. I'm trying to collect my thoughts here. Um yeah, I liked the yaoi, and I didn't understand why some people enjoy straight romance, because like supposedly there's a female protagonist that you identify with and like a male love interest that you drool over, right? But I was thinking, why would you want that when you could have two hot guys to identify with and drool over? It's like double the fun. And I was like, why would someone who, if you're into men, you read gay fanfic, right? And if you're into women, you like consume lesbian content. Why would anyone want the straight stuff unless they're like a bisexual with a specific thing for it? I kind of assumed that all straight people were auto heterosexual, or at least all straight women. I was kind of like not quite confident enough to say that about the men, but I assume that everyone experienced attraction the way I do, which is kind of tainted with envy above a certain level. When I get strongly enough attracted to someone, it spills over into envy.
Yeah, and has that, so did you during adolescence, you'd have, like, crushes on guys and then start envying them at the same time?
Well, it was hard to get crushes on guys as a teenager because I went to an all-girls school. Um,
Fair enough. Yeah.
but like fictional guys, sure. But I wasn't imagining dating or having sex with them as myself. Imagining myself in it, in the fantasy kind of, kind of spoiled it. I didn't I'm not attracted to this flabby pear-shaped body, you know.
Right.
I would rather have
Yeah,
a hard manly body like yours.
thanks, yeah. It's yeah, it is nice to be strong and stuff, but yeah, there's definitely some part of me that obviously wishes that I had more female typical traits.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, but,
Still,
we
AAP
kinda
is
have to
great.
roll with what we got.
Yeah, and AAP is great, like workout motivation.
That's, like, the healthiest way to I think that's one of the most healthy ways to deal with autoandrophilia is to hit the gym and get swole.
Yeah,
Um,
unironically, I think this can really be used for like self-improvement because like okay, so every like both gender stereotypes like femininity and masculinity, they both include some positive traits that everyone should have, right? Like if you're like really pro-social and nurturing and sweet, that's like kind of a good thing for anyone to be, like being really polite and empathetic and considerate of other people, right? That's a good trait to have. And if you're really confident and like standing up for yourself and hardworking, problem solving, putting your mind to stuff, that's good stuff for everyone. And sometimes when you're raised as like when you're raised as a man or when you're raised as a woman, you don't it's not impressed upon you enough how important it is to have the positive traits that are associated with the other gender. So, like, you know, if you're motivated to embody that other gender, it can kind of even you out as a person, make you more well rounded. I do think there's a lot of potential there for self improvement.
yeah, I would agree, and I think that's one of the best ways to try to channel it, at least in a like a personality and behavioral sense to, like you said, round out, make yourself more well-rounded and balanced.
Yeah, because if it's about becoming like your own ideal partner, then an ideal partner really is like for most people is in many ways an ideal person.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um,
I know. That's why I said it.
yeah. Um, what are some during adolescence, you started to, read yaoi and stuff. What are some other sort of behaviors or thought patterns during that time that that you attribute to autoentrophilia?
So it's changed trajectory for sure. Like when I don't have many memories of like thinking, damn, I wish I were a boy when like puberty started, I was just like I was just, reading about all this fun gay sex and like I'm over here, sex is over here, and sex that's got nothing to do with me because, clearly to have sex and have sexual pleasure, you got to have a dick. And I don't have one of those, so that whole world of sex has nothing to do with me, as fun as it may seem. Um, so that was a thing. Um, I think if I'm talking about things that progressed and changed, meta attraction. That's a thing that I like before this interview. I was thinking a lot about like we got to talk about meta attraction, right?
Yeah,
Um,
what's your experience with that?
that I'm so glad you asked. So like one of the reasons that I believe that I am AAP and not AHE, like like AHE, like auto homoerotic. I think like the idea that like what we have is a separate thing that isn't the female version of AGP. I think I do have the female version of AGP. Um, is your microphone no, not your microphone, but like this is all like you can hear me, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Great, great,
Yeah.
great. So one reason that I believe that it is um AAP and not AHE is that I experience meta attraction to women, and if it were just about like being a gay guy and having gay sex, then women would have no appeal to me. But like I experience meta attraction to women, and I like the idea of like being a guy just by myself, like existing in a male body, and I don't know, maybe jacking off a bit. That sounds fun. I'd like to jack off my cock. um but like yeah, I am meta attracted to women, and I think because like when I was a kid, I was always completely straight, right? I had no inclinations to women whatsoever. Started puberty, and I was still totally straight. And like I went through all the physical changes that you're supposed to do, like pubic hair tick, armpit hair tick, periods tick, all the big like important ones. Tick them off like every box. And only after like that had all happened and the changes kind of slowed down, only then did I start to notice women. And I was like, what is going on? Has my sexual orientation changed? That's impossible. Your sexual orientation doesn't change. So like there's I was like, how can I be attracted to women now when I never have been? Like I was just so confused. I was like, this can't be what a true gynophile feels, but it's also not nothing. So like what the hell is it? And I
Yeah, what
now
did it
do
feel like?
believe um it's it's very it's more emotional than sexual um to me. Like I'm not thinking about eating pussy so much as I am thinking about like doing sappy romantic things, like I don't know, going on a date and I'm the one who pays for it, or getting married and she's wearing a dress and I'm wearing a suit, some shit like that. And it's always got me in it. Like how I said before that like when I was fantasizing about men, I was very much removed from it, and if I like became self-conscious of myself somehow, that would take me out of it and be a turn off. With the meta
Yeah.
attraction, it's the exact opposite. I have to be there. I'm not just thinking about her as herself. I'm also thinking about how I would relate to her as the man in the relationship, as the one that wears the pants. I think about having straight sex and being the one to penetrate. Um, well, that part is sexual.
Yeah.
Think about having a dick and putting it in her. Um,
Yeah. It's classic.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but like here's the thing. I've heard about AGP meta attraction, right? And they talk about the faceless man. Um, they like just a faceless man with a hot male body just pounding them. Um, and that there's a little bit of that going on, a little bit of like having sex with some random woman. She could be anyone. But I also get crushes on specific women, and it doesn't turn them into interchangeable props. Like these are women that I already loved and cared for before as individual people, and I think about them and you know what makes them who they are, and that's something I've never heard AGPs talk about with their meta attraction. Um, but like I'm sure that it does like exist in that way for them, because that's what makes it so confusing. Like meta attraction is such a mindfuck. I do not blame
Mhm.
any self-straight person who believes themselves to be truly attracted to the same sex, whether or not it turns out that they actually are, because Like, I myself go back and forth constantly on whether or not my feelings towards women should be counted as attraction. Um, yeah, also another thing about meta attraction. Um, I'm, like,
Yeah.
going off on a rant now. Another thing about meta attraction is that, like, when AGPs talk about it, they talk about, like, how they get validation from being desired by straight men. You know, they get validation from being
Yeah.
desired by the people who desire women. But for me, it's not about desiring it's not about being desired by the same people who desire men. It's about desiring the same people
Right.
that
It's the other
straight
side
men
of it.
desire. Yeah, so in both fantasies, my fantasy and the AGP fantasy, the man is the subject of the desire and the woman is the object of desire. How boring, how cliche, but like that's how it is. So like me and my AGP lover both share the same fantasy of me finding her irresistible. But like, yeah, that's another thing. I feel meta attraction to cis women, but I feel even more meta attraction to trans women. Because like being attracted to cis women, that's a known thing that a female person could do. That could just mean that, you know, I'm a lesbian or I'm bi or something. But being a chaser, now that's a male dominated field.
Yeah, like being a gamp.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I feel a lot of meta attraction to trans women. But I also feel direct attraction to them, you know. I mean, they do have penises most of the time. I'm pretty obsessed with penises. Um, so it's like this potent combination of attraction and like both kinds of attraction, the direct and the meta attraction, that really draws me to
Yeah.
trans women. And I'm pretty good at fucking trans women. I can make their bodies feel good, and I can give them gender euphoria while I do it if they want.
Right,
I
and it
know what
sounds like you
they
understand their
want.
psychology quite well.
Yeah, I do. That's what makes me the ultimate trans woman fucking machine. I'm serious.
Yeah, I mean, I don't doubt it. It's if you understand how autogynephilia works really well and you wanna play a really assertive male dominant role, like, you're probably gonna be great at pleasing them. It's
Yeah, and see, the
I'm not
things that I say
surprised.
about why I'm so attracted to them, I feel like they're attracted to me in the exact same way. Like, I've got a pussy, and, you know, kinda feel like people love that, but I can also I also have that desire to be the active one, the one who penetrates, you know, the one who wears the pants, and, you know, trans women are often a fan of that. So I think like they can be like have attraction to my body and also meta attraction once they get to know
I
me, because I don't present as a man, but like once they get to know me and
y
get to know me sexually.
yeah, I agree that it's what you're describing, it sounds right in the sense that there's both combined, like, the allo heterosexuality and then also the meta attraction. They're both they're separate, but they both sort of add and build on each other to create sort of an a extra enhanced attraction to
Yeah,
androgynous people.
yeah.
Yeah. Do you, y what sort of women that you said you felt meta attraction to women before? Like,
Yeah.
besides like, in terms of cis women, uh, are there any traits, l like, any patterns you've noticed, about, like, which ones tend to be attractive to you?
Um, they're usually shorter than me, but I guess most women are. Um,
Right, tinier than you and shorter.
yeah, I'm a bit on the taller side for a woman, which is something that I absolutely relish. Um,
Right, yeah, that sounds great for you. Yeah.
yeah, I love it. Um, I'm not that tall for, like, a guy, like, I guess you'd yeah, I'm not tall at all for a guy, but I'm kinda tall for a woman. Um, so, yeah, mostly, like, shorter than me, um, more feminine and smaller, um, a lot of I don't know, like, furry dog girls. Like, my ideal my ideal, partner, I think, in terms of, like, Yeah, my ideal partner is, Isabelle from Animal Crossing. That's, like, peak feminine meta attractiveness. Like, she's so smiley, she's so helpful, she's so, you know, just everything about her. Um Oh, and, if you're talking to her, that means you're playing Animal Crossing New Leaf, which means that you're the mayor of the town, which gives you political power. So,
Okay, yeah, I'm
sorry, I've gone on a
unfamiliar
bit
with
of
the
a
game,
but
but I'm
you know what
sure
I mean,
plenty of
right? Like, she's sweet and she's helpful and nurturing, and I wanna be nurtured, and I wanna, like, I wanna parasitize women. I want to, like, metaphorically suck their breast milk out of them. You know what I mean? Not literally, I mean emotionally. I wanna
Right, yeah,
emotionally
I know, yeah.
breastfeed/parasitize them.
Yeah, it sounds like you like the really feminine ones, the ones that are just, like, dripping with femininity.
Kinda, I guess, yeah. Mm, something like that.
Yeah, um,
Yeah.
so, yeah, originally you when you thought of sex, it's like, it's just guys, just men on men, but then over time, you started to experience meta attraction and then also attraction to trans women. Um, so yeah, that sounds very confusing. Um,
Well, I think p yeah, what were
yeah.
you about to say? You were about to say something.
No, you should say something.
Alright, I think part of the trajectory of my, like, development of my of whom I'm attracted to and my sexual fantasies is partly just growing up because the younger I am, the further I go back, the more removed I am from my own sexual fantasies. Whereas nowadays, I can even enjoy a sexual fantasy of like having sex as myself in my body, like thinking about things that could actually happen with real people or have happened, like just enjoying memories of sex. I'm a lot more there. I think that like a lot of these newfangled asexual spectrum identities are made by teenagers who are just going through the normal phases. Like I used to think I was demisexual when I was like, younger, and then I thought that I was autocorosexual, and then I thought that I was agosexual. And like
Mhm.
those the descriptions of those labels are all very real things. I know that they're real because I've experienced them myself. That feeling of completely losing attraction to someone once they know that you're attracted to them. But like that doesn't happen to me anymore, and I think I just grew up. Um, yeah. It's good though to
Yeah,
grow up and to be able to have sex for real and be actually in it and in your body. Like like one thing that I love that has nothing to do with AAP, in fact it's quite un-AAP of me, but I just love having like normal straight sex where I get penetrated in my vagina and it doesn't do anything for the AAP, but it's just a nice physical sensation. I think it's fun sometimes to just like be in your body and forget about all the meaning of it and just like enjoy the things that your body is able to do.
right,
I don't know.
yeah, instead of attributing a bunch of, like, gender symbolism, just enjoy the sensations and the connection to the person.
Yeah, I mean the gender stuff is like, that's all well and good. That's great. I love that stuff. And, it comes and goes how much that is. I mean, I'm sure you've heard of the concept of like heterosexuality and autoheterosexuality competing. That's definitely I've definitely felt
Y
that. Like
yeah.
when I have a strong crush on a guy, I feel like I'm competing with him for my own hand.
Yeah, but does that competition, um, like, how does that affect your ability to form relationships with men and maintain them?
Good question. I think my ability to form relationships with men is not great. Um, I don't my relationships with men, they're usually just guys that I like have sex with, like, I mean, we can go beyond that, but the sex is the foundation and the thing that started off the relationship. It's I don't I don't have much of that non-sexual kind of friendship with any men. Um, I'm trying to think. It does affect my relationships with men, I think in a way that, like, well, my sexual orientation fluctuates, as you know, sometimes towards more masculine people and sometimes towards more feminine people, and, like, if I'm, like, with some cis guy, and then I start having that shift towards AAP and meta attraction and all that, I'm gonna be less interested in having sex with this guy who makes me be the woman in the relationship just by being a man. Um,
Right.
something that I hear a lot of trans people say is that, like, their gendered mental shifts will be largely determined by who they're with, and, like, like when you're around a bunch of women, you feel like one of the girls, and when you're around a bunch of men, you feel like one of the guys. And for me, that is, like, the least relatable thing I have ever heard that I ever commonly hear trans people say, because for me, it's the exact opposite. Like, my mental shifts are very much determined by who I'm around, but I'm not seeing myself as, like them. I'm seeing myself in contrast to them. I feel most masculine when I'm alone or surrounded by only women. I feel most feminine when I'm with a bunch of dudes, especially if I'm the only woman.
That's interesting. Yeah. And so that makes it so you'd does that make it so you'd prefer to spend time with women and it like, in a friendship sense and less with men?
Kinda, yeah. I mean, lately I find myself spending more and more time with men and less with women, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. I'm not sure I like it, but it's what it is. I don't know, maybe it's attraction, like normal heterosexual attraction that draws me to them. But I know that's the way it's going, but I do like to, like, I like the idea of being a man among women. Like Lou Sullivan's whole, Lou Sullivan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read his book, and, like, man, that book was so relatable. But Lou Sullivan's whole thing was to be a man among men, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's what he lived for. It's what he died for. But
Yeah.
what is a man among men? A man among men is just a person. If everyone's the same sex, there aren't those dynamics so much. I feel like being a man among women is much more meaningful. It's like it's like meta attraction, but for friendship.
Right, yeah, no, that's interesting. It sounds like what you experience, yeah, it's you put it really well, yeah, meta attraction, but for friendship where, yeah, the contrast between you and them makes you feel more manly. Yeah, that
Yeah,
doesn't sound normal, but it makes sense to me.
yeah. I guess it's not. I guess now that I'm thinking about it, it's not that normal. It's like seeing all my friends as some kind of romantic partner. That's a little weird, but it's how it feels for me.
Right, well, it's not like, is it really like a
Like
conscious thing that
I'm
you're
not
thinking of
romantically
them?
attracted to my friends.
Right, yeah, but it'll influence sort of, your gender feelings being around them. I mean, I think that's normal for autoheterosexuality.
Yeah, yeah. My
Yeah,
the
but you
company I
look
keep
different.
totally affects how I'm feeling.
Yeah, you mentioned experiencing mental shifts earlier. Um, can you explain sort of what that feels like firsthand, and then maybe sort of what situations tend to trigger it?
Um, well, I can tell you what triggers it. Being around women, like I said, especially being around women in a sexual or romantic way. Um, Feeling sexual desire is something that triggers it. That's that's why I think that, like, I was about to go on a bit of another tangent there and not answer your question, but um what else? Just, anything that makes me feel like I'm living up to some kind of male stereotype, it can trigger that kind of shift, but sometimes it just happens. It's easier to give examples of what causes it than to describe what it actually is. And what
Right.
it actually is, I feel like I would either be relying on sexist stereotypes, or I would be saying, well, it's just about feeling aligned with who I want to be and liking myself.
Yeah, it's right. So it's hard to put into words how it feels firsthand. Uh, I've noticed with say like with in my book I sort of centered uh Mr. G. I called him, but that person was called Mrs. G in the original source literature. But like they described feeling like strong, confident, self-assured, invincible, um like those sort
Yeah,
of
there's
feelings.
definitely a confidence boost.
Right, yes. Okay, so you feel more confident when you are feeling a mental shift, and okay.
Yes, I feel
Ho
more like I
how
have a right to exist.
Yeah, like, just completely assured of yourself, like, that you definitely deserve to exist and to take up space and, like, have agency and all that stuff.
Yeah, and like I can, be right about stuff. Like
Yeah.
I don't have to question myself so much. Like I was questioning myself hardcore before we started this interview. But I'm doing fine. I'm acing this, I think.
Yeah, you are doing fine, yeah. I'm glad you decided to come on the channel because there's just so few chances for autoandrophiles to be able to hear others like them talk about this stuff while using the appropriate constructs to talk about it instead of just gender identity language.
Yeah,
Um,
nobody talks about the sexual aspect. Nobody talks about like jacking off the air in front of your crotch and pretending there's a dick there. Well, I mean, I bet they do, but nobody says I unironically identify as an autoandrophile. Except me sometimes. I say
yeah.
that. But
So
yeah, but I'm not a
have you
trans
done
guy.
the jacking off the air thing?
Yes, I
Oh
talked
yeah.
about it with another AAP, and she said I do that exact same thing, and that's why I brought it up just now.
Yeah, 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 that's so interesting. I mean, it intuitively makes sense to me because by putting your hand through the motion in where it would be if you had a penis, it of course, like, symbolizes having a penis.
Yeah, exactly. You're doing the thing with your hand that you would do if you had a penis. You can't have a penis, but you can at least do that thing with your hand. Anyone can, so you do.
Yeah, do you when doing that, do you, like, also use the other hand at the same time to actually, like, touch yourself, or is it just like a just the jacking off motion?
It's just the jacking off motion, which of course provides no direct stimulation, which can lead to sexual frustration, which can lead to actual masturbation. But yeah.
Yeah, um, yeah, it's kinda like a f like a foreplay with yourself almost.
Yes.
Um, what, have you experienced gender dysphoria?
Yep. I sure
And,
have.
like yeah, and, like so what sort of situations cause that to happen, and, like, what does it feel like?
Um, Well, like I said, like being surrounded by a bunch of guys and feeling unsure of myself, kind of causes that. Um, Sometimes my actual body, of course, will cause it. Like I felt that way about my breasts for a long time. I still do. Um, feel that way about my breasts, I guess. Um, I don't really like I don't like how broad my hips are. That's one thing. Um, trying to think of other things that can cause gender dysphoria. Um, going on the internet and seeing people like make fun of trans masks. that does it.
Oh,
Because like
yeah.
you know that's I'm like that's the closest to a man I'll ever be. So if being a trans mask is cringy and still feminine, then there's no hope. Um, I don't know. It just comes sometimes, like the mental shift. Sometimes the gender dysphoria will just come when I'm not thinking about. Oh, I just thought of one. S-
Yeah.
Seeing a really hot guy that I'd want to be that can cause me dysphoria sometimes.
Right. Yeah, that's understandable. Is that
Yeah.
does envy happen at that same time too?
Yes, dysphoria and envy. They're like so intertwined.
Yeah. Gender envy's like it sucks when it happens. I've had it happen a few times before. I mean, now that since I understand the psychology so well, I tend to keep myself away from that sort of thought pattern, but, like, when it has happened, it's a downer for sure.
Yeah. It yeah, it's like to me dysphoria feels like heartbreak. It feels like when the person you love doesn't love you back and they'll never love you back. Gender euphoria is the opposite of that. When you feel like the other person does love you back and like, there's hope and all is right with the world. It's a romantic thing. And dysphoria is heartbreak.
Yeah. So okay, so, like yeah, did you read so in the gender dysphoria chapter of my book, did you relate to that when I guess when I described gender dysphoria as a kinda heartbreak?
I'll
Um,
be honest with you. I can't remember a lot of the specifics of what was in your book.
okay, no worries. It's a long one anyways. Um, but yeah, yeah, what you're describing sounds exactly what, like, I'd expect in terms of the heartbreak feeling, and then also the love feeling when you're feeling, like, gender euphoria.
Yes.
Um, what can you recall, what the first few times you felt gender euphoria, like, what sort of situations triggered it?
There's no way that I can remember like the first times I felt gender euphoria. That's like asking me to remember the first times I felt happiness, but I can remember sometimes I felt gender euphoria. I can remember recent times I felt gender euphoria. I've definitely had gender
Okay,
euphoria
that's
from
fine.
being mistaken as male. You know how it is. You get a lot of gender euphoria. You get a thrill from being mistaken as the opposite sex, and when they find out their error, you get disappointed.
Right, that
It's like for those few
excellent feeling,
moments I
like,
really was a
instantly
guy.
goes away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Um, but recent times I felt gender euphoria have been connected to um romantic engagement with trans women. Well, with a particular trans woman.
have you talked with, any trans people about autoandrophilia or autogynephilia?
Yep.
And, like, how does that usually go?
Some of them like dismiss it and say it's transphobic and not real. Um, one person actually turned out to identify with the concept. I was surprised. I was very surprised. Um, one trans woman, believe it or not, hadn't actually heard of autogynephilia. I had to like actually explain it. So that was kind of weird because like what trans woman hasn't heard of autogynephilia? Um,
Some of them haven't.
a
Some of them
very
have had surgery and
a very
haven't
well
heard of it.
adjusted. Yeah. Um, what was I saying? Yeah, I've talked to it. I've talked about it with like some trans people, and it's frustrating when people say that the whole concept is transphobic because like whatever you think of the typology, you can't deny that AGP exists. I mean, it only takes one AGP to prove that it exists in some capacity. Um, yeah, but like I can say that AGP exists without like calling you AGP, you know? Like, I'm just you can't, like, say that I'm not AAP, like, I just straight up am. But yeah, different reactions. Obviously, the online trans community is much more of a hive mind, I guess, because, there's pressure to be. You don't wanna go against the crowd. It's scary to do in online spaces, but if you talk to people one-on-one offline, there's a bit more diversity and a bit less high emotions.
Yeah, that's my experience too, exactly. That online, it can tend to go really bad, but then in person, it you'll get way more people saying that they relate to it, or they'll at least not freak out in the same way as over the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's, like, that realness of actual just human connection. You pick up on the body language and everything, and it's so much more than just the words, and people can see that you're not trying to troll or hurt them.
Absolutely.
How does, like, how do you dress in everyday life? And, like, how does autoandrophilia impact that?
It impacts it for sure. I dress kind of, I guess, like, more masculine or gender neutral. Um, I wear, like, skirts and dresses less and less often. I've completely stopped wearing makeup, which is a thing that I used to do because, like, when I was a teenager, I was, like, um, experimenting, trying to find myself, and there were times where I'd go through, like, hyper feminine phases of presentation, which is not at all how I wanna present myself now. But, like, I dress casual. I wear jeans and a t-shirt, and I have short hair. Um, I'll wear a
Okay,
jumper
yeah.
if it's
Do you
cold.
think you'll keep short hair for, like, a long time?
Yes.
Yeah, you said that you used to dress more feminine, but you do it less over time, so it sounds to me like, um, there's some sort of, like, the cross-gender expression is sort of strengthening over time.
Yeah,
Is that the
yeah,
case?
I guess it is. Oh, that's another thing that I wanna ask you. As an AGP, you will have insight into this. What's the deal with late transitioners? I understand people who transition young, like, they know that they wanna transition when they hit puberty and they do it the first opportunity, or maybe they, like, repress for, like, a little bit and then they finally decide that it's not working, but, like, it doesn't take them that long. I also understand people who don't transition at all. Maybe they're just not dysphoric enough for it to be worth it. But I don't get these people who transition in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. What's with that?
So, my understanding is that erotic target identity inversion, the sort of, identifying as another thing and then wanting to be another thing and feeling sad that you're not that thing, sort of that general form of, like, autosexual trans identity. It tends to build over time, and it's cumulative, and so even if so it sounds like it's not making sense to you because if someone transitions late, like, their appearance outcomes aren't as good, but, like,
That's not it.
no? What
No,
is it?
it's not the appearance outcomes. I understand why, like, they wouldn't be thinking that far ahead. They probably didn't even know earlier that they were gonna transition, but, like, it's not like they were, consciously decided, "Right, I'm going to transition, but I'm gonna wait a couple decades for no reason at all." I think people, do repress first. I just wonder, like, so you're saying it does get worse?
But that sort of, yeah, the desire to be the thing, the other type of thing, and the conviction that you ought to be that and that you want to live like that, it tends to grow over time. Like, for example, with what you've described with your fashion, it sounds like it's gone in that direction where it was dressing masculine was sort of intermittent at first, but now it's you're like your norm and you don't anticipate going back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like that, but just for more than clothing. Like, for your body and your social role and your psychology, your behaviors. Like it's sort of a steady progression of cross like greater cross embodiment over time, a greater commitment to being that way. It's sort of like a ratchet, it just keeps going one way.
Huh.
Um, I I think that's what's going on because it's often like the people AGPs and AAPs in their teenage years, they might be having really strong gender feelings, but they don't yet have a strong conviction of, "I definitely wanna transition." But then by the time some of them are in their 30s, they've been dealing with these feelings for years, and then by that point, they're very sure of what they want, and, um, basically all their internal resistance has been beaten down by by their autosexuality.
Right. I have many thoughts about this that I would like to spew out now. That's an interesting theory of like it getting worse and worse over time, and that is what I've heard from
It's not
AGPs.
for
I
everyone,
mean,
but
not
it happens
directly,
to
but
some people. Just
right.
I just wanna clear that for the audience so they don't think transition is necessarily inevitable, but yeah, for some people, it tends to be that way.
Okay. Okay. I want to say my thoughts about all of this. Um, I have heard that idea of it being a progression. Um, I kind of came up with my own like alternative theory, but I don't know. I'm just talking out of my ass, so like stop me if this is ridiculous. But I had this other idea that may or may not be relatable to some people, where instead of like a steady progression where it gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse over time, I was I thought maybe like the dysphoria comes in waves, and each of those waves
It
has
is
only a
higher than the
small
one
chance
before
of
it.
making you trans. Yeah, right. Like each of those waves only has a small chance of making you transition, but like, if you add up all those small chances, the chances over your lifetime that you'll transition are much higher. And I thought that would explain like why trans women often transition at such very different times in their lives. But I don't know. Maybe that's completely off base. Maybe
Well,
it's
I
like get always as a steady upward climb, like you said.
well, no, I think you're right that it comes in waves. Like, if I were to draw it, it would be like, it would be waves, but not, like, across the flat line, it would be, like, waves that, like, steadily, like, go up over time,
Right. So like a
and
combination of the ideas.
right, exactly. Because there does seem to be a cyclical wave-like nature to it where sometimes people will be fine and not feel great distress, and then other times they just feel intense distress, and they go back and forth. And I've noticed, like, say among the people with body integrity dysphoria, the ones that want to become amputees and disabled and such, that some of them, like in the BIID subreddit, they talk about the wave. Some of them actually use that terminology to refer to um, yeah, the sort of those moments where the desire to change their body is really intense. And
Mm.
I think that point you made about just the waves over time, and then at some just probabilistically, if each wave has a small chance of leading the transition, that over time, the cumulative probability of transition will go up.
Yeah,
Um,
like the probability of any individual waves doing it is low, but the probability that like at least one of them will do it is much higher.
right, and then, like, if someone does it, then they can sort of get really attached to it because it's like a sexual orientation, so, um, yeah, that's an interesting way of thinking about it. Um, yeah, usually when people come up with ideas, I don't think they're that good, but that's an interesting one that's probably worth looking into.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's clear that you've thought about this a lot.
Oh, I've thought about it so much. Oh my god. I'm like autistically fixated on this concept, and I'm not saying autistic to be hyperbolic. I am actually a confirmed autist. I was diagnosed at age 9. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I use the phrase autistically interested in things to indicate great interest, like, and I haven't gotten a diagnosis, but I'm pretty confident I take the psychometric tests and I score above the clinical cutoff. So I don't know what the clinicians would do besides administer those same tests. I can take them myself. Um,
Yeah. By the way, what is it with self-traits and being autistic?
uh, I mean, my working hypothesis for this hasn't really been looked into, but researchers have found that there is a great overlap between being trans or non-binary and being autistic. And I think
Yeah.
what's happening is that the there's as the word autism indicates, it comes from the root autos for self. It's sort of a general
Yep.
turn inward with your cognition and
Yep.
awareness, where you have a rich inner world. And I think whatever the mechanism that Blanchard theorized that routes your sexual orientation either inward or outward, I think it's more that autogynephilia, autoandrophilia is more common among autists, probably because that general turn inward in psychology, like if it happens to that location mechanism in your orientation, that you'll then have an autistic sexual orientation, basically the autosexual orientation.
So this is
Um,
just the autistic version of being horny.
uh, it could be. Like I said, this is my hypothesis to try to make sense of the huge, like astonishingly huge overlap between autists and autosexuals. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's the autistic way of being horny, if you want to put it in a funny way. Um,
Yeah, I do wanna put it in a funny way. I wanna put everything in a funny way.
yeah.
I like it when people laugh at my jokes. It makes me feel, like I'm worthwhile.
Do you think that's part of like related to autoandrophilia? Like, do you like
I
male
mean, every
comedians?
uh, male comedians. I'm trying to think of who I find funny. The people I laugh at most often are my friends. Um, I mean, every trait. I'm not saying that like going a bit off on a tangent here. Every trait that I like about myself, and I also think is masculine. I have to second guess that. Like, do I actually have this trait, or is it just AAP and wishful thinking? But I think the humor is real because, well, for one thing, I don't see that as like a male exclusive trait. Like, you know, it's 2024. Women can be funny, even if men often don't think so. Like, maybe men aren't always the target audience, but also, um, what was I saying? Other people have also found me funny in the past. So, yeah, if
Right.
other
Yeah.
people say it repeatedly, like sometimes I get mixed reviews on certain traits of myself, and I'm like, well, what is the truth? People tell me complete opposite things. But if people consistently tell me the same thing as about myself, then I internalize that.
Yeah. That's reasonable.
I'll probably be less funny if I'm trying,
Oh, absolutely.
I assume.
Absolutely. Yeah. But also, if you do try more, or in terms of like, if you make jokes more often, it'll probably not only make you more skilled at being funny, but also more people will think of you as funny if you do more jokes.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Um, I'm curious with you know about like the different subtypes, right? Like the anatomic and behavioral and all that stuff with the
Yeah, I've heard of those.
yeah, which ones do you think that you have?
Um, let's see. Um, transvestic in the past, believe it or not. That's one. Like anatomic, obviously. I guess I guess it would also be, yeah, behavioral. Like it shifts over time. It's shifted more towards behavioral lately, and definitely less towards transvestic. Like with the transvestic thing, it's kind of embarrassing to admit, I feel. Because like with AGPs, it's a lot more understandable, right? I mean, these are
Yeah, what
clothes
sort of
that
I'm
These are
curious
clothes
what
that
sort
have
of
been off
garments
lim like, just normal,
like
like, men's clothes. Like, with ATPs, these are clothes that have been off limits to you your whole life, and also they're often, like, just generally more pretty and easier to sexualize. And so, like, I can understand getting off on that. I often think about, like, the fun time I would have as an AGP crossdresser if I had been, born male because, you know, there's a lot of like, I mean, I guess I could just dress that way as a woman. But, like, with the AAP, um, transvestic the transvestic AAP, it's like, these are clothes that have never been off limits to me. I've worn similar things my whole life, and they're boring as batshit. How am I getting off on this? What kind of mega cum brain must I be? But,
Uh,
like,
I mean,
um
I think it's reasonable if you see it as men's clothes, like, it are you talking
yeah.
about is it just, like, wearing jeans and, like, a t-shirt sorta stuff?
No, I mean, women wear jeans too and T-shirts. I mean, I'm a woman, I wear jeans and a T-shirt, but, like, I guess, like well, when I was a teenager and I was, like, trying to do as much as possible to quote unquote transition without doing anything permanent because it was planned obsolescence. I knew I wasn't going to be trans forever, so I didn't want to do anything permanent. So, like, kind of buying and wearing men's clothes was like, you know, sort of my only outlet. And Lynx deodorant, even though I didn't like the smell, I wore it for the gender euphoria. I believe you call it Axe over there. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah, the sort of, like, spray, it's just so over the top, like, it smells awful,
yeah,
but it's, like, all the teenage boys liked
yeah,
it.
that was me. I was trying to be a teenage boy, um, instead of a teenage girl. But, like, yeah, it was just like normal, casual men's clothing. Um, I guess men's underwear are like an area where it's more gendered. Like, I wear men's underwear now.
Yeah, like, what style?
Boxer briefs. That's what I
Classic,
wear
those are
every day.
good. Yeah,
Yeah,
those
yeah,
are
they
good.
are, right?
Yeah. No thigh chafing, comfortable.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Nice and comfy,
yeah.
physically
Do you
and
ever wear,
emotionally.
yeah, definitely emotionally, yeah. Have you ever worn, like, jock straps?
No, I have not. I've never owned a jockstrap or worn one.
Have you tried packing?
I have, but it seems it feels very silly to me. Like, I can pack in my own home, but I would just I mean, I guess partly because I'm not a trans guy, but, like, I don't know, it feels silly to pack, like, with the expectation that people are gonna be looking at and scrutinizing your crotch, and if they were, you would want something smaller than the average packer, right? The average packer is so much bigger than the average dick. What's with that?
Well, I think you know what's up with that.
Yeah.
It makes sense, like, if, like, a big dick is attractive to women, then the autoandrophiles would want to be wearing one, basically.
Mhm.
S So, like, what do your outfits, like, usually look like?
Um, like I said, jeans and a t-shirt. It's winter right now, so I'm rugging up a little bit. In summer, it's kind of harder, I feel, to dress masculine in terms of, like, shorts. Like, I don't know, men's shorts, they don't fit me that well, and I don't know, I don't really own that much in the way of men's shorts. It's easier to
You don't have any cargo
dress the way I
shorts?
want in the um, I have cargo shorts. I guess in summertime, I have to choose between, like, looking like an absolute affront to fashion or, like, looking a bit more feminine, which, I can tolerate either of those. I just feel like I look more put together and well dressed in the winter. And by put together and well dressed, I mean, like, not looking like a garbage bag.
Yeah. Well, do you ever wear like, in the winter, do you ever wear men's formal wear, like suits or ties or anything like that?
No, I don't even own any of that. And, like, it sounds like fun. Like it's almost weird that I haven't tried that, but I just don't know what occasion I would wear that stuff to. I also don't know how to tie a tie.
You can, if trust me, if you
That's
get a tie, you'll
that's true.
figure it out real quick.
Yeah.
But are the men your do the men is like have you not done that partially? Like, are the men that you find attractive not do they not dress like that?
I'm trying to think. Um, like in formal wear. Sure, hot guys wear formal wear sometimes. I've seen them do it. Um, yeah. Like
Uh,
I think it would be fun to wear men's formal wear. I don't have the occasion. On like more formal occasions, I wear like what a woman would wear. So a dress basically.
right, yeah.
I never wear high heels though. To to me, those things are like synonymous with humiliation.
Yeah. I mean, I personally don't wear them. I I don't like the ergonomics of, like, how it totally screws up your ability to walk properly.
They're horrible.
They're awful. Yeah.
I've always hated them, and I hate them even more since having like an embarrassing experience of them, where like I wore them without any preparation, and I realized like while wearing them that I didn't know how to walk. It was so bad. So yeah, those things are like viscerally linked to embarrassment for me.
Right, yeah.
Plus, I'm already tall. I don't need them.
Yeah.
Though I wouldn't mind the extra height.
have you have you thought of getting, like, those men's shoes for getting taller?
I have, but I don't have any. I've got some shoes with thick soles, but I don't have any with like the little bit in the ankle. I mean the heel.
Right. Yeah. I just had that thought, like, if you wanted to be even
Yeah,
taller, you could get some of those.
trans guy shoes.
Yeah. Um, let's
You're looking at your dot points, huh? Me too.
my dot points. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
your bullet points. We're both trying to make sure. We're both trying to like see if we said all that we want to say. I can definitely see some that I haven't said yet.
well, yeah,
But
that
they're
yeah,
not
well,
very well
are
organized.
they don't
That's why
have to
I'm
be because
looking
once you
at them.
start talking, it'll just work out.
Yeah,
Um,
it has been. I'm surprised how well it's been.
yeah, it's conversation. It works. Yeah,
It
I
so
when I
does.
look at my dot points list, as you put it, I don't. I think I've asked the main stuff that um I would ask. So I guess what are some of your dot points that you'd want to talk about?
Okay, I definitely still have some. Um, I'll just go to a random one. The bag of esteem analogy. I'll just explain that analogy.
Yeah,
Um,
what's that?
so I feel like I have a bag of esteem that I carry around with me wherever I go. You know, like esteem for people. And when I meet someone I admire, I'll give them a little bit. I'll reach into my bag and I'll give them a bit of that love and admiration. And if I love them a lot, I'll give them a lot. But it's always my decision to do it. It always feels under my control, and there's always some left in the bag for me. Like in this bag that I'm doling out this esteem from. I always have some left over for me, for my self-esteem. However, certain people that I really, really admire as people whom who often just so happen to be really hot guys that I also admire on a much more superficial sexual level, like a visual level. They come around and they slash a hole in the bottom of my bag. And now this esteem is just spilling out everywhere. I feel like I can't control it. I love them too much. And because it's all spilling out and there's a hole in the bag, I feel like there's not going to be any left for me. I love them so much that it makes me hate myself. Um, yeah. Does that make sense?
Ye yeah, it sounds to me like yeah, this metaphor sounds similar to the emotional experience of, gender envy when, like, there's like, that if you're around a really hot guy that you would then feel in comparison, feel very insecure and unmanly, and then it would be hard to sort of be proud of yourself, like, in that moment.
Yes, absolutely. I feel inferior. I feel like I've been shown up. I feel kind of pathetic. And I think some of this autoheterosexual psychology is about wanting control kind of thing, because if you're really, really strongly attracted to someone, then, like, they kind of have a lot of power over you, right? The thing that you're most attracted to controls you, and you don't want to be controlled by some outside force or some outside person. You want to be in control of yourself. So if you can become the thing that you're most attracted to, you regain that control. So I do think, I mean, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and when you're me, everything looks like it's about control and loss of control, because that's the running theme of my life. But I do think it is kind of about regaining control by becoming the thing you're most attracted to, because that does have so much power over you. And I think it's also about wanting to receive the love that you put into the world, because you give so much love to the opposite sex, and you want to receive that love. You're like, I'm losing something. I'm bleeding out here emotionally. I'm giving this all away, and I want to be on the receiving end of my own love. It's not enough to just have a boyfriend and love him and, like, get loved by him back to trade my love for his. No, I want to receive my own love for some reason. Like, the other way just doesn't feel as close and as intimate or as controlled. And I think that I hear from AGPs is like, they'll be like, I just feel like I'd be so much more lovable as a woman. I can't be loved as a man. But, like, lots of people love men. I love men. They just they only feel like men are unlovable, and being a man makes them unlovable because they do not love themselves in the way they want to be loved, because their sexual orientation doesn't allow them to. They want to be loved in the same way that they love women.
Yeah.
They want to receive their own love. So, like, being a man doesn't make you unlovable. It's just you who doesn't love men, because you're a straight man. You only love women in that way that you want to be loved. Am I making sense?
Yeah, no, what you're describing sounds I've definitely seen that sort of pattern of thinking in, like, the Ask AGP forum, and yeah, it's, like, hard for if you do have this auto-heterosexuality pretty strongly, it can be hard to see the value in being, say like, if you're an AGP, it can be hard to see the value in being a man because everything that is beautiful and good is women, and so therefore, how can you be lovable yourself? Like, how can because your feelings about women are so strong, and yet your love for yourself is comparatively weak.
Mm,
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
yeah. Do you want me to move on to the next dot point? There are, like, I feel like
Yeah,
there are,
yeah,
like,
what's your
4.
next dot
I
point?
I'm counting them. There are, like, 1, 2, 3. Oh, maybe there are only 3. Oh,
Yeah,
here's a
let's hear your
little
dot
he
points.
yeah, thank you. I'm taking the stage. I really hope this is actually recording. If this
It
somehow
is
turns out that this, like, is
it
there
is
a way to know
recording.
that? Okay, good.
It
Because if
says
this
it on the
somehow turned
screen.
out to yeah, if this somehow turned out to be, like, not recording and all my audio is lost, I would, like, throw my computer across the room. Um,
We could just record again, it would be fine.
yeah, but, I won't remember everything I said, and I probably won't say it the way I wanted
You'll
to.
say new
Alright,
things
I'm
and
just gonna
it would be fine.
alright.
But
So,
yeah.
2, um, 2 people that I think might be AAP. 1, Elizabeth Holmes, I think that's her name, the Theranos lady. She's like
Yeah,
AAP
what
for
makes you
Steve
say that?
Jobs.
Because she talked with a low voice?
Yeah, but, like, she, like, is specifically, emulating Steve Jobs. Like, she wants to be Steve Jobs, like, very obviously. That's 1. and also Ayn Rand.
Ayn Rand, I could agree with that. I would say the Steve Jobs one, that one seems like she's emulating the most iconic tech person, and she was kind of just, like, trying to be successful, but,
Fair
I
enough.
mean
I mean, you know, hammers and nails, like I said.
but
I
yeah,
just like
Ayn
to
Rand's
look at people.
definitely, like
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, I haven't read Rand's work, but the way she kept her hair, I mean, she looked quite masculine, the way
I read a little
it
bit, like the first little bit of whatchamacallit, The Fountainhead. Yeah, it makes me wonder. I like to think of who might be, you know, secretly the same as me. Um,
yeah. No, Ayn Rand's definitely is a good guess.
yeah. Um, okay, next dot point. A reason like the reason that I came on this whatchamacallit, this not podcast, this interview thingy. The reason I'm doing this
Yeah.
interview um is, well, partly to raise awareness of AAPs, because, you know, there's not much of that, and partly out of a very normal human desire to throw out my 2 cents into the conversation. Um, but also, and I've said this to you before, I want to raise awareness of self-straits with little to no dysphoria. Because, you know, if you have a bit of these feelings, right, you get kind of shunted into transition because you go online and you say, like, why am I feeling this way? And people are like, you're trans. And then you get pushed into the trans community. And in the trans community, dysphoria is part of the culture. Like, even if no one directly commands you to have dysphoria, like, hey, you, get more dysphoric. No one says that. But, like, just having it be part of the culture, like, it becomes quite present. And so when you do feel those little bits of dysphoria, they feel validating because they validate your transness and your, you know, trans group identity, and so you nurture that dysphoria. um you pay a lot of attention to it, and it gets worse. It does get worse to be around a bunch of dysphoric people. It makes your own dysphoria worse, but you shouldn't be nurturing dysphoria because it sucks. We don't want to nurture dysphoria, we don't want to nurture suffering, and we don't want to base our identities on suffering because then we'll never heal from that suffering. So, like, it's one thing if you're already as dysphoric as you can be, then you can, like, you know, wallow in it, I guess. But if you're not, if you're only a little bit dysphoric, you should leave it alone so it doesn't get worse. And people don't realize how much worse it can get. If you're wondering, is this the worst my dysphoria could be? The answer is probably no. And if you're wondering if you even have dysphoria, then it's definitely not as bad as it could be. So I do think there needs to be awareness that of, like, people who aren't, you know, self straights who are not that dysphoric, and, like, be like, we exist, and, you know, this can give you a group identity without having to have all that suffering. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
I mean, I'm 100% on board with that, like, yeah, it's
Great.
important, like, I've noticed that same pattern that, when people when people online, they talk about their gender feelings, say on Reddit, for example, um, they'll, like, ask an S transgender, "Why am I having like, what are these feelings? Does it mean I'm trans?" And then basically everyone will say, "Not I'm not saying you're trans, but the feelings you're describing sound very trans." And and then
Yeah.
they get sort of coached, gets put down that pipeline, and then, like you said, the dysphoria is so big in that subculture, it sort of it validates the legitimacy of your feelings, and so they focus on the suffering as a validator of their legitimacy, which just makes the suffering worse, and I agree that, yeah, part of why it's really good to get more of this information out there is because you could instead of basing your identity on the heartbreak and the suffering, if you instead base your identity on a sexual orientation, which is a fairly stable part of your psychology, that doesn't even necessitate suffering, so it's not necessarily a identity based in pain. Um, I think it could reduce the suffering among, our kind if they could just be like, "Oh, I'm a sexual minority," and, like, sometimes I feel gender envy or gender dysphoria or whatever, but, that's just part of it, and it's this much broader experience.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I'm definitely,
totally.
I agree with your last, dot point, so to speak.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
There's more where that came from. I'll tell you that much.
yeah.
Um,
What's the next dot
so
point?
I'm not doing them in any particular order, but um, okay. So I have written down here the words late transition, and we've already talked a little bit about that. But okay, so here's the thing, right? I and I think this might be kind of clear. I believe that AAP and AGP are similar. They're like the different sex versions of the same thing. But I also I think partly I believe it, partly because I want to believe it, and I have a few reasons for wanting to believe it. One is the AAP itself, wanting to be like the guys. That could be a factor. And I wonder if that is also partly why you believe this, because if AAPs are like you, that means you're like us. But that's a bit of a digression. But like that's one thing. But another reason that it would be so convenient for me if AGP and AAP were similar is that like so much more is known about AGP than AAP. So if we decide that they're really similar, then we suddenly know a lot more about AAP because this knowledge about AGP can transfer to AAP and be true of both of them. But if we have to like start from scratch and research AAP like its own completely separate thing, then we're in the dark. And I don't want to be in the dark because I want to know if I am going to be a late transitioner. I want to know if I'm going to be Jane 50. You know about John 50, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
want to know if
I
I'm going to
got
be
that.
like that. Is that an AGP only phenomenon or am I at risk too? Yeah, that's why I was asking before about like why do people transition late? I want to know if that's going to happen to me. Yeah, that was that dot point. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I think, yeah, your point that, um, I think it would be I think it would be convenient if autoandrophilia and autogynephilia were analogous because like you said, otherwise we're just completely in the dark about autoandrophilia. However, if they are analogous, then there is a lot that you can transfer over in terms of knowledge from one to the other. And it as far as I can tell, they do seem to be similar, but they're different in terms of like the general pattern is that one is more femme-brained and one is more male-brained, so to speak.
right.
But yeah, sort of like how homosexuality is different between females and males, so too with autoheterosexuality. But
Yeah,
they're fundamentally both the same sort of sexuality.
right. Yeah, because I just I want to be able to know and to know that I know. You know.
Well, if you have consistently had like if your most strong sexual feelings are about being a man and being masculine, and this has been a lifelong thing, and you and you first when you encountered the concept of autogynephilia, you inferred that like, oh, I have whatever the female version of this is. Like, I think you can be pretty confident, you know,
Oh, I
that
know I'm
you
AAP. I just want to like know what that means for my life path.
right. Well,
Like, is
that's
transition
trouble.
inevitable? Because transition doesn't feel like something I want to do right now. It feels like an inevitability that's stalking me like an endurance predator. And I can outrun it now, but my legs might get tired.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think the science is there on knowing, even with the AGPs, how to predict whether they're predestined to transition. But like, if I had to guess, like what one of the most important factors is, I would sort of guess that it's the relative strength of the allo heterosexuality versus the auto heterosexuality. Like
Right.
if you can form um relationships with people of the other sex and have them last for a significant amount of time and be, fulfilling enough, I think that would help prevent, the sort of inevitability of transition. But if you have the autosexuality so strong that heterosexual relationships um, they don't really scratch your itch enough, so to speak, then it does seem transitioning does seem more inevitable. Um, However, demographically, we still haven't seen yet, whether there are a bunch of Jane 50s out there. We know there's plenty of John 50s, but, it seems like in this current generation, like the last 15, 20 years, um, a lot of the females that they all tend to transition early, and there's definitely some transitioning later. And there's subreddits dedicated to that, like FTM over 30, FTM over 50. There are some transitioning later, but it doesn't seem to happen as often, and I wonder why that might be. Is it like because females have a less intense libido, or maybe a little more flexibility with their sexuality? I'm not really sure. Um,
Right.
but yeah, do you have any, you said you're hoping that you won't have to transition at some point. Do you think you're
Yeah.
gonna succeed?
I don't know, but, like, I mean, part of me says I should just get it over with now to avoid the vocal entrapment. I don't wanna end up with trans guy voice. Um, but, like, another part of me is like, that is worth it to wait and make sure that you're absolutely sure, and also just avoid health complications. There are health complications to transitioning. There are heart problems, and if I go on it for long enough, I've been told that I'll stop producing my own natural hormones, and then I'll have to be on some form of HRT for the rest of my life. And like, yeah, I don't know. So much about it just doesn't seem worth it to me. Also, I'm afraid that going on T will make my dysphoria, such as it is, worse. Um, because detransitioners talk about how like once the T changes what it changes, the focus of your dysphoria just shifts to things that aren't so easily changed.
Yeah, the shifting goalposts thing with the dysphoria, that's definitely real. And
Yeah,
something to worry about, I think, is with testosterone, the changes are so quick and irreversible in comparison to estrogen that it's like I think it makes sense that you'd wanna be extra sure before going on testosterone.
yeah, of course. Like I'm sure you've probably heard of this theory of like when we should let people transition, but like there's this idea that estrogen doesn't really matter, but testosterone matters. What
Yeah.
what is different about you is like whether or not you've been affected by testosterone. Because it does so much more drastic stuff, and estrogen doesn't really do that much irreversible stuff except make you grow breasts. So you know, by that logic, we should let we should let trans women transition as early as possible, and try and make trans men wait as late as possible. I mean, it seems weird now to have different standards for different sexes, but if you
Well,
think about it, it is
no, it's
they are different. The hormones are different.
yeah. No, the sexes are different psychologically to start with, and then also the hormones are different. And no, I think there's a lot of, like, reasons to think that that logic is good. I think the idea of treating different sexes differently like that to a lot of people strikes them as sexist. Um,
Yeah, and
but
they'll probably say that, like, you're infantilizing women because you're making them wait to make this decision when men can make it any time.
right, like, yeah, the sort of standard feminist narratives, and it but it's so true that testosterone is really an intense drug, and it's so irreversible in its effects. And I think it makes sense that if there is to be different standards for the different sexes with regards to medical transition, that greater gatekeeping should happen for females.
Right.
Um, yeah,
Okie doke.
Was that your last dot point?
No, it wasn't. I mean, I feel like I'm prolonging this because like I'm looking at the timestamp and it seems long, but to me it's felt like it's just zipped by, and like I have so much to say, and I would like to get through all of the dot points. I have like four more, I think. Yeah.
We can do some more
I'm
dot
gonna keep
points.
going through them.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
keep going.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks. Okay. Another one. I think that autism, EDS, and AAP often combine to create the perfect storm of wanting to cut your tits off. Would you say that that's accurate? Because like I think more needs to be like we need to research this like well I don't know even know how you do such research, but like the combination of like transmasc gender feels and like EDS skin stretchiness combined with autistic sensory stuff. Because like you can look at the combination of any two of those, right? Like well, I don't know about EDS and well, like autism and EDS, right? Like you're autistic, so you have these sensory issues, but because of EDS, like your skin is the wrong tightness, like it's loose. Like you think having ill-fitting clothes is bad. Try having ill-fitting skin. You can't take it off. I don't have EDS, but like I am a little bit hypermobile, like a little bit like I guess subclinical. Like I went to the doctor and they were like, we're not going to give you this diagnosis because you know you don't really know about any family history and also you don't have any vascular problems. But like yeah, I'm pretty stretchy and like I can feel I can feel my the weight of my breasts pulling down the skin on my chest and it's awful. It is so awful. Um so that yeah, that's something. Um and like you combine that with like other factors of wanting to transition and you know breast removal is part of that transition. Like I guess what I'm trying to say is I think that like the desire to remove your breasts has more to it than just the general it being a general part of transition for a lot of trans masks. Because for me personally, like I may be lukewarm about testosterone, but top surgery is something I definitely want. And even in times when I've had zero desire to be a guy and I knew that top surgery would just make me like a woman with no breasts, I still wanted to be a woman with no breasts. So I think like the desire for top surgery is such a it's become its own thing. Like, you know, it's a big deal for trans guys, but I feel like it's a big deal for reasons that transcend transness. Like getting top surgery is almost like its own spiritual quest. That's how it feels for me. Maybe because I like it's been so long and I haven't had it that it's become pathologized in my mind. But you know, it just seems like it makes people so happy. And I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I that's an interesting, confluence of contributors that you mentioned, like the autism and the EDS with the stretchy skin, with the, like, sensory, stuff and the autoandrophilia, like, I could see that there you're basically saying that there's probably some females that, um, while autoandrophilia contributes to the desire to have breast removal, like, the desire to just not have those distracting sensations on your chest, um, is sort of like a separate standalone desire, right?
Yeah. It's almost more like BIID or something.
Right.
Like I heard
Well,
someone with
yeah.
BIID say like the description of their left foot, they said, "My soul doesn't extend into it." And I was like, that's such a profound way of putting it. And like maybe a left foot is just an inherently bad body part to have, and it's the rest of us who are insane. I don't know.
But no, I think
I mean,
that's an
because that's
interesting
what people
point
say
you
about
brought up.
breasts. They're like perfectly healthy breasts. How can you not want those? That makes me sympathize with the person who doesn't want their left foot.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, even though, like, since I'm an AGP, I would love to have breasts, like, I do see that they're not muscularly controlled, they kind of like, flop around, and they can get in your way, and it does seem like
Exactly.
there's yeah, it seems like it
They're
could just be very
uncontrolled.
annoying.
They're uncontrolled, but you still feel them. Like, what other body part is like that? There are no other body parts that are that large that you can't control, but you still feel them. Like, sure, if you have long hair, that whips around in the place, but you don't feel your hair jiggling about. Every other body part has some kind of muscle underneath, and the fat is just on top. But the breast, there's this whole big lump that's completely uncontrolled. I don't want to have a soft, uncontrolled feminine body with these things that bounce about painfully. I want to have a hard, masculine, controlled body, like you
Yeah.
have.
Yeah, I mean yeah, I it is nice to be
You
strong
seem to have
and
a lot of. Sorry.
yeah.
Yeah.
What were you gonna
I
say?
was. Sorry. I was just gonna say you seem to have a lot of control of your body. Like I've seen your hula hooping video. Um,
Yeah. I mean, I do.
But, like,
As
I
a
don't
kid,
mean to be weird and, like, comment on your body and stuff. I mean, I guess I'm
it
already doing that. I'm just gonna shut up on that now.
it's fine. I actually I didn't really exercise as a kid, but then, like, around 19, I started weightlifting because I didn't
Mm,
wanna be skinny anymore, and
right.
then I got into circus arts, and I did learn physical mastery of how to control my body, and it has been rewarding, to be able
Mm,
to, um, stand on my hands comfortably or to juggle 5 hoops. It's nice to feel physical mastery. There's, like, a sense of control. Um,
yeah. That's
so
another thing
yeah.
that's another thing that I wanted to talk about because, like, you clearly have a lot of time and a lot of your identity invested in hooping, right?
Yeah, I don't do it so much anymore because I've sort of transferred my special interest to the sexology stuff, but I
Right,
still
right.
try to do it sometimes just because it's a healthy hobby that sort of keeps me fit and coordinated and able, and it seems holistically good for me, so I do keep up with it.
Yeah, right. The reason I bring it up though is because like you did like do a lot of hooping, and you mentioned in your book that that was partly motivated by AGP because you saw
Oh,
hooping
yeah.
as a feminine thing, and so you
Yeah.
so it's like it's kind of like AGP has kind of taken over like a large amount of your time, and I wonder, I do wonder, are there
Absolutely,
any
yeah.
AGPs? I wonder if there are any AGPs out there who have gone into a pink collar job because of AGP.
Probably, yeah.
Like,
Definitely. Like
because like
like a
it's
male
one thing
nurse or
to
something?
yeah, like an
Or a
AGP who
hairdresser?
works as a nurse or a hairdresser or a primary school teacher or something feminine like that. Because like here's the
Yeah.
thing, right? A lot of self straights will like just do whatever job is like typical of their sex. Like, there are all these like I don't know, like the AGP programmer stereotype. That's one. Um, but like I'm thinking, right? You're kind of living the life that you would if you hadn't transitioned. But you are transitioning, you're changing the way you look and dress, but you're not changing your lifestyle so much. And like it's it only the auto heterosexuality, it only takes up the small part of your day in the morning when you're putting stuff on. Like the HRT can just be like another thing that you put on your body. I mean, it's hard to get, but once you get that prescription, it's easy to put it on your body in the morning. Like your shirt, socks, pants, tea gel.
Yeah.
You put it on, and then you go about your day as if like you're just any other member of your birth sex. But like, I wonder about people who don't do that and who like actually have their careers or hobbies like influenced by this. Because like, um, speaking for myself, like I'll be completely honest with you. I'm currently unemployed, but I'm trying to I'll have completed a course of study by the end of this year, and it's in an area that is a bit more. male dominated, and that is not entirely unrelated to AAP. Like, I'm not going to say that it is completely AAP, but let's just say that my meta attraction is not just sexual. I don't just want this. I just don't just want the same things that men want in the bedroom. I also kind of get that like gender euphoria from wanting the same things men want out of their lives. And so like
Right, yeah.
my kind of ideal thing is to like I want to become financially independent and have enough money to support myself and left over to like take random trans women on dates and pay for the meal for both of us.
I mean, that sounds like a pretty attainable goal, like, that's
Yeah,
good.
it is. I'm going to attain it and it's going to be great. And like the thing is that people don't do this thing of dedicating their whole lives to it because it's hard. It's easy to like put on some clothes and some gel in the morning. So people do the thing that's easy, and because people do the thing that's easy, I've become rather desensitized, I think, to seeing the effects of testosterone on the female. Like I'm like, who cares if I can have it? People have that. Seeing like because it's easy, a lot of people do it, and because a lot of it loses its AAP value. Things I don't doing a lot have AAP value for me. That is like working in a more male dominated field, which is something I can do without testosterone, or having a penis and male bone structure, which is something I can't do even with testosterone. So I've kind of lost a bit of that AAP value from the things that I can do with testosterone, but not without testosterone.
Right, yeah.
You
No,
get
I
that?
mean, what what you're describing sounds I mean, the way I think of it with myself is I'm doing the things that are actually attainable, um,
Yeah.
and also that have the sort of least side effects. Like, hula hooping does not damage my body, wearing women's clothes doesn't hurt my body, and they're both very attainable, and so I've been sort of routing my autogynephilia into those things, um, because it seems, yeah, like the safest, most accessible way to do it, and there is great I feel like there's a lot of it's quite rewarding to be good at things that you associate with the other sex.
Yeah,
Um,
totally. And like mm, if this is about emulating the opposite sex and like looking and acting like them, the way that I the way that I see the opposite sex looking and acting has been heavily influenced by how much time I spend around trans people. You adapt to those patterns. Your pattern recognition kicks in, and you like your models of what it means to be male or female. They change.
yeah, um, yeah, no, I think overall that's a good point about sort of the ways of behaviorally integrating this into one's life.
Yeah, and like take clothing
What's
for example, right? Wait, sorry, what were you
Yeah,
saying?
I was
What?
gonna say, like, what's, next dot point?
Yeah, this is going to be the next dot point, but I thought that like since it's so related to the previous one, it was going to be a very easy segue. So I was just going to segue right into that and say it, and then I was going to say the one after that, and then I would have run out.
Yeah, okay, you can say it.
All right, so like take clothing for example, right? Like, it's there's this typical like femboy style, right? Like programming socks and
High
cat ears and
skirt,
stuff. Yeah, like
yeah.
it's kind of a cross dressing thing, but like also that's not really female fashion. I would say that's more alternative male fashion. So like if you're dressing like that, it, if a group of people are trying to emulate the way women dress, they're going to do it like they'll get a bit of accuracy right, but they'll inevitably impart their own quirks. They'll have their own subculture style that develops and will become recognizable, and it'll be distinct from like the mainstream female fashion, and people will notice that. And AAPs who are into that will try and emulate it. Like, there will be AAPs who are trying to dress like men who are trying to dress like women. This is very common. It's common for AAPs to want to be male cross dressers. And
Yeah,
so, there are
yeah.
these layers to it all. And I mean, you can only add so many layers on top of each other before they kind of collapse into incomprehensible sludge. But it's real. The layering is very real. I just wanted to say that thing about the layering. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I think we see that with the queer aesthetic, just in general.
Yeah, the queer aesthetic. So like you can go either way. Like you can try and look like you can be like a woman trying to look like a man who's trying to look like a woman, or you can like embrace the fact that you're a woman trying to look like a man and you're a woman trying to look like a woman trying to look like a man. Some people go that opposite direction as well. Like on every layer you can do it the opposite or you can do it the same. So it's kind of like a branching tree where each thing has two branches. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that sounds pretty versatile too. Gives you a lot of options.
Yes, gives you a lot of options for sure. Do you want me to do the last dot point?
Sure, yeah.
I think in a way this might be the most important one, so maybe I shouldn't have saved it for, or maybe it is better. Well, I don't know. This one's important. This dot point is labeled as can't control how people perceive you, and this is about a realization that I had in high school when I had a lot of social dysphoria, and I realized that you can't control how people perceive you because like before then, I was rather distressed about how people I guess, saw me as a girl. I didn't want to be seen as a girl. I didn't want to be she heard. If I overheard someone talking about me using my female name and pronouns, it kind of felt like a splash of cold water to the face. And I just didn't like it. And I didn't want people to see me that way and it was stressful. But then I thought to myself, well, I have all these female friends and but I don't see any of them as just a girl. I see them as themselves, and being female is only one trait that they have. And if one of these female friends was to come to me and say, "Hey, I'm actually a trans guy," that really wouldn't change my perception of her in any way that matters. Because, like, sure, what you say about yourself does matter to people you've just met, but after you've known someone for a long time and you're one of the people that matters in their lives, it doesn't matter anymore. Because you develop your own idea of who they are based on what you've seen them do, how you've seen them act. So instead of telling people who I am, I should just be who I am. And if they're, you know, if there's nothing wrong with their powers of observation, they'll get it. And once I realized that, it really took a huge weight of social dysphoria off me. It was like kind of gone almost, and it helped so much. Does that make sense? All of that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think what you're describing about basically getting rid of the expectation that others will see you a particular way, like, just it's not in your control.
Yeah,
It's outside your locus of control, and so there's a great deal of resilience and strength in accepting that and not battling against it and just letting them perceive you however they're gonna perceive you,
yeah.
because otherwise, you're just gonna be getting mad at all the time, um, about how people see you, and so, yeah, I think, like, for instance, I know that there's nothing I can ever do to make anyone perceive me as, um, a woman, and so I don't have the expectation that I know that people are gonna see a man in a dress, and when that happens, it doesn't bother me because they're yeah, so I'm not gonna get mad that they're perceiving accurately, you know? And
Yeah,
there's actually a lot of liberation in that because you're not constrained by other people's thoughts. It's much more individually liberating, I think.
it's so liberating. It was such a relief to realize that because I realized that, like, I, I couldn't fix people's perceptions of me just by saying, "Hey, I'm a trans guy," because their perceptions of me were already as good as they would ever get just from having known me so long.
Yeah. I I think that yeah, that is a good point to bring up because I think a lot of that social dysphoria can be reduced if people just realize that how other people see you is not within your control
Yeah, it can be really painful though. I mean,
at first.
things that are outside your control are often painful.
Right, but once you accept that it's out like, truly accept that it's outside your control, not hoping that it'll be otherwise, I think it removes some of the sting from it.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess I have a question to sort of end this out. Um, for any of the autoandrophiles that are listening to this, what what would you want them to know or understand about autoandrophilia?
Gee, I don't know. I'm certainly no expert. Um, I guess that thing about, like, not controlling how people perceive you is an important message that I want anyone who is listening to this to take away. Um, I don't have anything in my dot points
Yeah.
about this. Um,
Well, no, that's fine. I realized, like, after asking that,
yeah,
like,
I
you
guess
kind of just what you just said already was probably that thing.
yeah, totally. I guess I would say, like, I I I would say you're not doomed to transition, and you're not doomed if you do transition.
That's yeah, that's well put. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, thank you for coming on the channel. I'm
Thank
gonna
you so, so, so much for having me. I had a blast.
yeah, don't close the window yet, just so you know. Um,
I won't.
and yeah, and so yeah, for the people that watched this lovely 2 hours, thanks for listening. And since this is YouTube, I'm gonna say do the like and subscribe thing. And yeah, that's all. And uh, yeah, it's okay to be autogynephilic, autoandrophilic. It's possible to be chill about it. It's fine. And yeah, thanks for watching.